Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a special online video event today called How Medicinal Plants Can Fuel Your Health and Spiritual Growth. Essential insights for detoxification, rejuvenation, and purification. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really thrilled to be joining you and hosting today's program because I get to learn right alongside with you from a true master in this arena. His name is David Crow, and he has been blazing a new path that helps us illuminate a new relationship with plants. It goes into how they can benefit our health, but really goes even deeper in how they can help amplify our energy and even increase our spiritual growth. It's a very holistic and multidimensional approach to plants that I think you're going to find really illuminating. David is somebody that has been the founder of Floricopia Aromatic Treasures. He's been at the forefront of herbal medicines for many, many decades, and he really offers a unique synthesis of medicine, ecology, and spirituality to really offer this new paradigm for how do we enhance our health and expand our horizons with the power of plants. So thank you so much for joining us here today, David.
Thank you, Stephen. Always a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, we're going to have this hour with David, and I want to let folks know right up front that we're going to have a chance to go much deeper with him in an upcoming 12-week program called Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution 2.0. So this is going to be a really groundbreaking program where you have a chance to go much deeper into the subject area, but we'll get a good dose of it today and hear more about it later. So, David, let's begin with a little bit about your journey. I always find, even if you've told some of the stories multiple times, it helps provide a little context for why you've devoted your life to this new paradigm of understanding how we relate with plants.
Yes, my pleasure. And as you know, every time you ask me to tell the story, I embellish it more and it becomes more fantastical. So I will do more of that. So for this course, there are three major lineages that I can point to in my background. The first was the good fortune when I was much younger to be able to meet a true curandera in the mountains of Oaxaca, Maria Sabina, and became very interested in the ethnobotanical traditions of Central and South America through that experience. And that's one of the influences that is woven into all of my teachings, the shamanic tradition and ethnobotanical cultures and the wisdom of ethnobotanical knowledge and lineages. And the second is my background in classical Asian medicine, which started in the early 80s. I was in the first generation of Westerners to graduate from an acupuncture college in California. And that was training in Chinese herbal medicine and acupuncture. And after that, I started my clinical practice. But I was not particularly satisfied with that level of education that I received at that time. I was also increasingly involved with the Tibetan Buddhist community in the Bay Area. And I had the good fortune of meeting a very profoundly enlightened teacher, Kalu Rinpoche, the elder teacher, the elder Kalu Rinpoche. And at his suggestion, I closed my clinics in the Bay Area and moved to the Himalayas to study Tibetan medicine. And I again had very good fortune. And within a week of being in Kathmandu, I met my first teacher of Tibetan medicine, Dr. Ngawang Chopo, and ended up spending a total of about 2 years, 6 different journeys to Nepal. And I studied Tibetan medicine with that teacher and also Ayurvedic medicine in a very classical internship, apprenticeship situation, harvesting the herbs, making the medicines, doing all these things. And during that time, I met not just Dr. Chopra, but also 9 different teachers of Ayurveda. And 8 of those were men, 1 was a woman. And all of that became a book I later wrote, In Search of the Medicine Buddha. And so that is the other main lineage, the other primary influence in my work, classical Asian medicine. And the third lineage really came out of my experience working clinically later in Southern California, where I was bringing all of these lineages of training and practice together. And I became aware that a lot of herbal medicine was not really very available for people in the West. I was seeing that it's really not the same situation as classical Ayurvedic medicine in the Himalayas, where people are using the local herbs, making medicines from the local herbs and so forth. And in Los Angeles, of course, there were pretty significant economic factors for people to be able to get the help that they needed. So I started to really look at the bigger question of grassroots healthcare. How can we replant the lineages of Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine in such a way that they become more accessible to people? And I started realizing that, well, the secret to that is we really have to grow our own medicines. We have to grow our own herb gardens, our own community gardens, and we have to learn how to bring these medical traditions back from the ground up. And so I became involved in more activist projects and started working with herb farms and community gardens and school gardens and so forth. And many projects happened over many years, and this really represents a third strong influence in my background. And so it's really those three. It's a long interest in traditional ethnobotanical medicine. It's decades of study and practice in Chinese, Ayurvedic, and Tibetan medicine, classical Asian medicine. And it's also this community activism level of what can we do with all of this at a local level. So that's a very brief overview of decades of being involved with plant medicine.
Well, it's a pretty remarkable journey you've been on, and I think it gives you a very holistic viewpoint, which is very different than a lot of what we're experiencing in today's modern pharmaceutical kind of industry world. Is everything's reductionistic, getting to the one essential ingredient that you're going to distill out into a pill. And so you're really taking us in a different direction, which is to relate to plants as in their totality as holistic allies to us. And I'd love for you to just share more about that paradigm shift of starting to appreciate the even sentience and wisdom in plants.
Well, one of the most important concepts to remember is that the plants created the biosphere that we live in. We are completely dependent on plants for the atmosphere, the air that we breathe, for food, nutrition, and many things that the plants do that make it possible for us to live here. They create the atmosphere, they control the weather, they detoxify the water, they do all of these functions metabolically and physiologically at the level of the planetary surface. And what's interesting is that they've been doing this for hundreds of millions of years, and those functions of cleansing and rejuvenating the biosphere are found in the plant's biology. In other words, the plants have these biological functions of rejuvenation and detoxification that they have been doing for hundreds of millions of years that has led to the creation of a habitable biosphere for higher life and the presence of the food chain and all the other things that they do biologically. And then if we look at herbal medicine, even food plants, if we look at our relationship to food plants and herbal medicines, what we see is when we ingest them, they do the same things inside the human body that they do in the ecosystems of the planetary surface. And so one of the very important realizations that I've had in studying this particular subject in view is that herbal medicine is really using a good definition of herbal medicine is using the substances that the plants produced for themselves for parallel human functions. And if we look at those parallel functions, we see that there are many parallels between humans and plants. We see that we came out of plants. The plants were here a long time before we were. We are completely dependent on them in all ways, biologically. Our human body is designed anatomically and physiologically to be in an intimate biological relationship with plants. And the same functions that we use medicinal plants for, medically, they're always doing in the biosphere as well. So this particular view has given me a great appreciation for the importance of plants in general, because without the plants, we don't have a life. We don't have a habitable planet, a biosphere to live in. And we also are the end result, biologically, of a lot of evolutionary intelligence that happened over a very long period of time in the plant world. And so when we look at herbal medicine and what they're actually doing, what we see is that the plants are photosynthesizing sunlight. They're influenced by moonlight. So they are vehicles of celestial energies. And they are also metabolizing nutrients from the earth and water, and they're breathing the air. And these elements are moving through channels of space. And so right away, we have a good vocabulary to talk about the plants in terms of Ayurvedic and Chinese language of elements and energies. And therefore, if we look at the energies and elements that the plants contain, what we see is that they contain earth and water, fire, air, and space, and sunlight, and moonlight. And they also contain very ancient intelligence that goes back a very long time. And so when we eat food, we are actually eating that intelligence. And if we have healthy food, it supports the intelligence of our life force. And if we have a bad diet, the food's processed, there is no life force in it, eventually the life force inside our own body will start to weaken and break down. If we get sick, we therefore need to improve our diet, and we also need to bring in some highly concentrated sources of nutrients as well. And we also need to detoxify. And so a very simple description then of what we are doing when we use medicinal plants is that we are using the intelligence of nature to support our own intelligence. Now, if we have that basic understanding that this is what plants are doing, this is why we need plants, then out of that comes a very different view of the world and our relationship to plants. And just speaking for myself, I can say that that view is one of respect, even reverence, and respect and reverence for the functions of nature, and recognizing that there are many basic things that we cannot do anything about as humans. All of our technology is not going to save us. But the biosphere has its own intelligence that if we can let it operate, it will save us from ecological collapse. And if we know that nature has this intelligence, and we can respect it and even feel a sense of reverence for it, it gives rise to what we could call a kind of ecological spirituality. So that's the short version of how I view plants at this point.
Well, that was just a beautiful explanation, and I can see that part of this is it's not just about figuring out what the right plant is to deal with the right, the particular sickness or challenge we have. It's really about reweaving the connection. So it's like we're becoming reintegrated with our ecology rather than separated, which is so much of what humanity has done, is gradually separated ourselves and isolated from our ecological foundation, and then that actually helps to erode the basic health and vitality in our being. And so by reconnecting and revitalizing, and then we have all these allies that are already available and we've had for millions of years, but we've sort of gradually become disconnected from.
Absolutely. And there are very practical applications of this. It's not just a matter of recognizing that the plants are good for our health or that we need the plants. It's also that the field of herbal medicine actually is one of humanity's greatest needs at this point. As the biosphere continues to become more diseased, we're going to be facing more epidemics, and this is developing very rapidly. And I think personally that one of humanity's greatest priorities right now is natural medicine and healthy food. And the practical thing about this is that if we support, here's a simple example. If we go to the local farmer's market, we support the local organic farmer, we are actually supporting the rejuvenation and detoxification of our local ecosystems. Well, medicinal plants are also a key to ecological restoration because they are the most lucrative cash crops. They're far more valuable than food plants, actually. And so this is what we start to see economically and ecologically, is that the medicinal plants can heal us not just physically, not just mentally and emotionally and spiritually, but they can heal us socially because gardens bring people together. Natural medicine gives us a link through the plants biologically to nature and a great appreciation for that biological connection. But they are also the source of sustainable, non-toxic economies. And we need more sustainable, non-toxic plant-based economies more than ever. And I think that this is one of the big keys for global rejuvenation and detoxification by the plants. It's just recognizing that we need more plant-based economies and ecosystems, and we need natural medicine more. You know, if you look at what pharmaceutical drugs do, since you alluded to that subject, the pharmaceutical drugs, you can read the entire physician's desk reference, the thousands of pages of fine print of what the drugs do. You cannot find a single drug that gives the body nutrition. And you cannot find a single drug that detoxifies the organs and tissues. As a matter of fact, they all disturb the nutritional status and they all increase the burden of toxicity. Now, that doesn't mean that pharmaceutical drugs don't have a role. They do. But as the quality of the food chain continues to decline and as toxicity in the environment continues to increase, and this is at the root of the epidemics that are happening, especially in the West. Chronic degenerative disorders are totally linked to this, to these two root causes. You can see that the prescription medications simply cannot address the problem. They can't give us the nutrition we need to rejuvenate and build our vitality and increase our immunity. And they cannot detoxify us. That's what the plants do. That's the crucial realization for why herbal medicine is so important.
Well, it's fantastic. I feel like I learn more from you each time, and I really appreciate you keep expanding our understanding of why this is not just a good idea for us personally, but it's really a master key to turn the lock of a new way to live on this planet. So let's talk with that kind of holistic, wide-angle lens. Let's also get into some of the specifics. Let's say detoxification. You mentioned several times that something that pharmaceuticals don't do, and is often one of the things that people turn to herbal medicines first. So maybe give a bit of understanding for how we can use herbal medicine to detoxify.
Well, herbal medicine detoxifies just because that's what the plants do. That's what the plants are currently doing all around us. If you look outside the window, if you have plants outside your home, they are busy detoxifying. They're detoxifying the atmosphere. They're detoxifying the water. They're detoxifying the soil. And so plants have this natural process of detoxification. And so we bring those plants in and they support our natural detoxification mechanisms. So one of the very important things to consider about herbal medicine is, as I just said, it does two things that the allopathic medicines cannot. They detoxify us and they rejuvenate us. They strengthen us through nutritional improvement. Now, a lot of people are very interested in detoxification. There's a lot of trendy detox programs. And approaching this subject requires a little bit more knowledge and sensitivity than is often found out there. And people, one of the things that I found in clinical practice is that people often feel better when they start to do detox programs, and that's because it's taking a burden off of the organs. It's not necessarily because there's detoxification happening. It's just that it's giving the organs a little bit of a rest to eat lighter, drink juices, and so forth. But it's not actually that efficient many times to do a lot of the popular so-called cleanses. They work temporarily, but they don't actually work at a deeper level. Now, the reason that this is important is because people can definitely overdo it with detox programs, and they can do it too frequently. They can do it for too long. They can do it at the wrong time of year. They can do it if they actually need more nourishment, and they can hurt themselves. People do hurt themselves. They deplete the digestive power, the digestive fire, and they feel better for a while, and then the problems come back again, and that's because the detox didn't actually rejuvenate. It temporarily took some stress off the organs, and people feel lighter, they feel better. But we see that there's a much more complete system in Ayurveda, especially about following detoxification with rejuvenation. And so that's the other half of the equation that people frequently forget about. And so whenever detox is done, such as in the Panchakarma practices of Ayurveda, it's always done using a lot of relaxation. This is another factor that people don't understand. They do a cleanse while they're trying to maintain a heavy workload, and the body needs rest when we're detoxifying. It is work to detoxify. And also when we just take time off, we're detoxifying. You see, if people just took a break, they would become less toxic. And so you have to do these things together. And then you need to do it in such a way that's not too harsh on the body. So Panchakarma, the 5 actions, the 5 cleansing, detoxifying, purifying actions of Ayurveda are now very popular and well known. And they're based on massage. They're based on warm oil massage, steam, and mono diet, so forth, medicines for the ear, nose, and throat, Shirodhara, the warm oil cascade over the head. What this does is it moisturizes the body, oleates the tissues and channels, and it makes it easier to eliminate built-up toxins. It also is very systematic because it drives the toxins back out of the joints and blood circulation, muscles, tissues, back into the digestive tract where the toxins originated, and then they are flushed out. And that's much more complete than a lot of the detox programs that are done more superficially. So first we can learn something from classical Asian medicine about that more effective way to approach detox. And then we can also see that after detox, rejuvenation is necessary. Now, the focus that I always have, what I always encourage people to think about and to remember, and the way we're going to talk about detoxification in the course that's coming up, is that the human body has 2 basic physiological functions. And these are to assimilate the nutrients that are basically sunlight and moonlight that the plants have captured through photosynthesis and the nutrients from the earth, because we can't eat sunlight directly and we can't eat dirt. And so we eat the plants that have created the food from the elements around us. And so really, what we run on is sunlight. We're solar-powered beings. And that's why our thermostat is set at 98.6 degrees. That's the body warmth, the sunlight combusting in the cells. And so the first function of the body is to assimilate the prana, the life force, the chi from the sun and the earth. And that's what gives us life. And the second metabolic function is to eliminate the waste. And it's really just that simple. All diseases at a basic level are just a disturbance in assimilating the nutrients of the cosmos and eliminating the metabolic waste products. Now, that process is going on all the time. And there's no such thing as, we suddenly just become toxic, although if we're exposed to heavy types of toxic influences, it can increase rapidly. But the body is always detoxifying itself on all levels. Every organ detoxifies itself, every tissue, every cell has detoxification mechanisms. And this is what's important to remember and to support so that we don't strain the organs and overstimulate them, which just makes them more tired and weak. So we remember that if we get good, deep sleep, we are detoxifying. Now, what does that have to do with herbal medicine? Lots of herbs can help us get good, deep sleep. And you wouldn't think about it that way, but if you take herbs to get good sleep, those herbs are helping you detoxify. And then every time we eat good food, we're also detoxifying because the process of detoxification, which happens mostly in the liver, is dependent on nutrients. You cannot detoxify without nutrients for the liver detoxification enzymatic pathways. So when we eat good food, we are detoxifying. And if we need more concentrated nutrients, the medicinal plants will do that also. And then when we are breathing, we are detoxifying. And so if we're having respiratory problems, we use some essential oils to open the lungs. We take some herbs to support our respiratory function. We are helping detoxification. When we exercise, we are detoxifying. And there are herbs that can give us more athletic endurance and vitality. And so we look at all these different ways. I mean, even when we meditate, or even especially when we meditate and relax, we are detoxifying. And so there's all these ways that we detoxify naturally. And so my personal approach is, let's look at those ways the body is already detoxifying and assist them, support them. And that's where we can see that detoxification using herbs is not just taking senna, a laxative, flush out the colon. It's not about that at all. It's helping the bile flow through the liver. It's helping the nutritional status of the liver. It's helping the kidneys. It's helping the lungs. It's helping the nervous system. It's helping the adrenal glands. It's helping with chronic stress. So that's the more holistic way of looking at how plants can help us detoxify. And then the same thing with rejuvenation. Once a detoxification process has happened through a program, if we want, we can then start to use herbs to rejuvenate. And that's the other major approach that herbs really support. And the body's always rejuvenating also. We have to look at the different ways that the body rejuvenates itself. Again, it rejuvenates itself through good food, it rejuvenates through sleep, and so forth. Same methods, same processes again. Now, if we understand that the plants help us to detoxify and the plants help us rejuvenate, then we can make it more personalized. And that's where a lot of people run into difficulties. Because as we get older, we should be more cautious about more extended, harsh, deeper, prolonged types of detoxification, because the body is gradually getting weaker as we move into our 50s and 60s. And by the time we're in our 70s, 80s, we have toxicity. There is no doubt, especially if we are on medications, because our processes of elimination and detoxification don't work so well. But that doesn't mean that an elderly person should do an intensive cleanse, because you have to consider the status of the life force. And so as we get older, the emphasis shifts from needing detoxification to needing rejuvenation and nourishment more. So this whole thing is mm, very individualized, and that's one of the areas that there's confusion about. We can do detoxification more effectively at certain times of life, at certain locations. We have to consider the weather. We have to consider whether the person is fundamentally healthy or fundamentally weak. We have to consider the age. So all of these things are all part of the classical methods, especially in Ayurveda. There's much more emphasis in this process in Ayurvedic medicine. And so we can bring this information and we can make these processes much more effective. And they don't have to be dramatic either. That's the thing, is that they can be an ongoing process. And that's what I advocate for, is that now we are in a state of life because of stress and the toxicity of the world and the quality of the food and all these modern influences. We basically need ongoing, gentle, and effective detox. And we also need ongoing, gentle, and effective rejuvenation all the time. Now we can modify it and focus on one aspect a little bit more at one particular time. But my personal approach that I advocate and teach is that we should learn how the plants do this from both sides, and then we should just have it be part of our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Let's give, I think, the overview of a paradigm shift of how to relate to detoxification and rejuvenation is really interesting, and just seeing how it's like it's pivoting to work with the natural processes rather than try to like a force. There's only like a way that modern medicine has got it trained us in a way that we're forcing and fixing things rather than like a mechanic, rather than we're working with the natural processes that are already underway. And so that itself shifts our relationship with our body and with plants. And so I'd love for you maybe just give an example. I know we're not giving specific protocols here on this call, but like how might you do a kind of a daily detoxification, daily and weekly? What might a rhythm of that look like, and maybe some of the specific herbs you might use to support that?
Well, it really depends on the individual, but there are certain groups of herbs that are really safe and beneficial for everybody to use on an ongoing basis. And those are going to be things that are high in nutrients. Those are going to be things that are going to be anti-inflammatory in nature. And those are going to be things also that are going to be very supportive to the liver. And so one of the most famous herbs, everybody knows about it now, is turmeric. And that's a perfect example of something that comes from an ethnobotanical tradition. It's just something that people cook with all the time in India and Asia. And this particular plant has so many benefits in terms of detoxification that it's something that can easily be brought in. So that's one very simple example. It's not dramatic, it's not exotic, but it's highly effective. And results are coming from the scientific studies confirming that ethnobotanical traditions know something. And they're finding that it's preventive for so many things, including Alzheimer's and dementia, neurodegenerative conditions. The list of things that turmeric is good for is very, very long. So that's one simple example. And that's an example that we don't actually have to be concerned about. Well, it's a detox herb, and therefore you should only take it for a period of time, and it should only be used individually. That's just something that everybody can bring in. Another group of herbs that are in this same type of category are herbs that we would call adaptogens and herbs that we would call hepatoprotective herbs. And so hepatoprotective herbs do just that. They protect the liver. And one of the most famous of the hepatoprotective herbs from Chinese medicine that's now coming out and found in all kinds of forms is schizandra berries. And these are also very easy for people to use on an ongoing basis, just as a supplement. They combine very nicely in a tea, and they combine very nicely with goji berries. That's a nice simple formula. And that's something that people can take frequently to have both a hepatoprotective and a detoxifying effect and a rejuvenative effect as well. It's very immune enhancing. Another group of herbs that are very beneficial for this general category are the medicinal mushrooms. Medicinal mushrooms, I believe personally, and I think that the science is really revealing some pretty amazing information about these, but these include reishi mushroom, the lingji mushroom, mushroom of immortality from Chinese medicine, but also a lot of other species of fungus like the cordyceps and the lion's mane. There's many species of reishi, actually, many varieties of reishi mushrooms. And these are things that can be put into the diet easily, and these have very important adaptogenic functions, meaning they help the body cope with stress. And they are also hepatoprotective and anti-inflammatory, and some species specifically target the brain and the nervous system. For example, the lion's mane is very protective of neurodegenerative conditions, neuroprotective functions, which our brains need more and more because of environmental toxicity. And so we can look at the entire group of medicinal mushrooms, and that's another very nice way to just bring in some plants that are going to be detoxifying, that we don't need to worry a whole lot about what is our current health status. These are things that are basically going to be good for everybody. So that would be a very simple starting point for a wide audience. Because if you start to look at detoxification at a deeper level, you have to really look at the age and the health condition and so forth. But we can start with basic groups of herbs, and there's actually many, many herbs that can be brought in relatively safely on a daily basis. Another group of herbs are the aromatic plants. And of course, these are the plants that give us the essential oils when they're distilled. But these would be the aromatic herbs and spices we use in cooking. And we can classify those into two major groups. One would be the traditional herbs from India. That's where a lot of these spices came from historically, originally. Cinnamon and clove, black pepper and ginger and cardamom and these kind of things. And the other group would be the herbaceous aromatics that originated in the Mediterranean region. Those would be things like oregano and thyme and the sages and basils and so forth. Now, these plants, because they contain essential oils as their primary active constituents, have very important immune enhancing and detoxifying effects. Those aromatic compounds, when we ingest them in our diet or make tea, for example, tulsi tea. Many people know about tulsi, the holy basil. Many people know that if you just drink tulsi tea, that it has a detoxifying effect on your respiratory system and a rejuvenating effect on your nervous system. And so the aromatic compounds, when we use them at this biocompatible level in teas and spices in our food, they give us antioxidant powers that are protective in the liver. The science around all of this is revealing remarkable things. But I would say that this is a very important group of herbs that we can easily bring in. And again, it's not fantastic. It's not exotic. It's very simple things. And this is one of the things that I like to emphasize, is that plants frequently are very humble healers. We frequently do not have to go to exotic places and find really rare endangered species. There's things growing in our yard that work better than pharmaceutical drugs. So these are the starting point for a general audience. It's real simple folk medicine kind of approach. But the more we use these plants, the better we will feel and the more protection we will have. And in a simple way, it's really basic, but it's highly, highly effective. I mean, I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of cases where people have been able to get off different medications for digestive disturbances, even serious things, just from drinking simple teas like tulsi and chamomile and things like that. So these are very humble healers, but they are very, very effective, and that's all that matters.
Hmm. Well, I love the term humble healers, and each time you're just bringing alive a whole new world for us. One thing we mentioned on the page describing today was just how there's actually 4 levels in Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine of treatment, and from medical to spiritual. I'd love for you to talk about how we start to address these different levels of our being with an herbal protocol.
Well, both Chinese and Ayurvedic and Tibetan medicine have this system that I find very helpful for putting in perspective what the point of medicine really is. And it gives us a system of classifying herbs also. Now, in this system, there are said to be 4 levels of treatment. The first level, which is considered the inferior level, is treating illness. Now, of course, treating illness is not inferior at all, because anybody who doesn't feel good knows that all you want to do is feel better. And if a person especially is chronically debilitated, you know how important it is to overcome the obstacles of illness. You know how many obstacles illness can cause, and how much anguish it causes the mind and the emotions and the spirit. And so being able to cure disease is very, very profound, and yet it is considered the lowest level of using herbs. Now, the reason for that is because there's a superior level, and that level is prevention. And prevention is superior to treatment in many ways because it's easier. It's easier to stay away from illness than it is to get rid of illness. So the old Chinese medical saying, you should not be like the patient who is waiting until the house is on fire to dig a well. You should be taking care of things on an ongoing basis. And that's why the last points that I just made about using simple herbs, even without a lot of knowledge and training, simple things like medicinal mushrooms and aromatic herbs and spices and turmeric and things like that, simple things like that constitute both a level of treatment that will frequently get rid of many, many illnesses, but also they represent prevention. So prevention is superior, and we should think about prevention. You know, in the courses that we've been offering here, the general demographic includes mostly people who are older. And it becomes more difficult to use herbal medicine if you were just starting in your 60s or 70s. You see, because then you have to go through a whole learning process of what the plants do and what they feel like, and when you should use them and when you should not use them, and so forth. And so I really advocate that people don't wait to start using herbal medicine. And this is especially important for neurodegenerative conditions now. And so for people who are watching our interview here, who are perhaps younger people in your 20s, earlier even, I know there's interest at that level in these courses, I would advise, don't wait until your 60s to start taking herbs to take care of the brain. As a matter of fact, you need those herbs for college, for your test results. And so we should be taking the herbs now on an ongoing basis to help us to keep illness away. And that's the superior level. And then we can say, well, what's the next level? And what's the purpose really of prevention? Well, the purpose of prevention in these traditions is not just so that we can go to more parties, stay up later with less side effects, or push ourselves harder at work. It's so that we can live a long life. because you can use herbs in an abusive way, and a lot of people do actually. They are abused for energy. They are abused for stimulants. They are abused by athletes. They are abused by people who are overworked and pushing themselves harder. And so it's not just using the herbs, it's also why we want to use the herbs. We want to use the herbs to get well, stay well, and then live a long, healthy life. And the definition of the goal, according to Ayurvedic medicine, is not just to get old. Like a lot of people now, they're very old, but they're on a lot of medications and they're not really alive even. They're really debilitated. Mind is not working, limbs are not working. So Ayurveda defines the goal of good health as fully functioning mind, fully functioning and happy senses, fully functioning limbs, freedom of the limbs. Okay, so that's where we would like to be as we get older. We would like to have freedom in our body. We would like to have freedom of movement. We would like to have freedom from the obstacles of disease. We would like our mind to be clear. But then comes the last level. Why should we treat disease? Why should we prevent disease? And why should we prevent disease with the goal of having a long life? What's the purpose of a long life? To make more money? Well, when we get to the end, very few people care about that. So Ayurveda, again, says that the final aim of life is moksha. I like that word. It's sometimes translated as liberation, enlightenment. I like the translation of emancipation. It means emancipation from the bondage to our senses. So it means we have accomplished something spiritual, a transformation within our consciousness that has freed us from the world in a particular kind of way. So we've achieved ultimate inner freedom and liberation. And what I find really amazing is that this is depicted clearly in these medical traditions, especially in Tibetan medicine. There's actually a statement that is made in the Tibetan medical tantras of the ultimate goal of medicine. And this is so beautiful. It says that there are relative and absolute accomplishments. And in the Tibetan medical system, these are described as the 2 flowers and the 3 fruits of medicine. The 2 flowers of fruit, freedom from disease. That's what the medical system should do. And the flower of longevity. That's what a medical system should do. It should keep us free from disease and give us a long life. The 3 fruits, material well-being, that means prosperity. Okay. We should be able to manifest prosperity with our good health, our mental clarity and focus. Happiness. Having good health should bring us happiness. And having gone through several episodes of illness myself, I can tell you that sometimes just curing the illness is all I have needed to feel deep contentment, to just sit on the couch and feel what it feels like to be free of pain again. So people who are sick really understand that. But finally, the ultimate goal is spirituality. In other words, enlightenment, moksha, which I gave one definition, but I wanted to give the definition of enlightenment as the result of the ultimate result of medicine, according to the Tibetan tantric lineage, which is the lineage that I was taught by Dr. Chopal. And there's a beautiful term, I'll read it here for you. It says, the fruit of obtaining unsurpassed enlightenment which liberates the psycho-spiritual components in the body of light, achieving ultimate bliss. Now that's the goal of medicine. I think that's very profound. And that puts everything else into context of why we should be using herbs a step at a time, not just for taking care of our inflammation or getting better sleep or detoxifying or rejuvenating, but really with a greater purpose in mind. And so Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, understand this clearly, and they also classify the herbs according to these different systems where they say some herbs, they're really bitter and they're really cathartic, and they should only be taken for very short periods of time for treating disease. They're not really for prevention. They're for treating disease. Others are more for prevention. And then others are really more for longevity. And then finally, there are those that really support that process of going deeper in our spiritual practice, that process of going deeper in meditation. And many of the herbs work across all four levels. Like, for example, the medicinal mushrooms. Those are very, very famous for treating illness, preventing illness, giving long life. That's why they call the reishi mushroom the mushroom of immortality, because it gives long life. But it is also considered to be a species of plant that gives profound nourishment to the shen, to the spirit. You see, so there are certain plants that nourish our spirit that can be used and have been used forever in the various traditions by the yogis in Ayurvedic, in the Vedic traditions. We see things like the bacopa, brahmi. And brahmi also is another species, the gotukola. And these two plants are both called brahmi, referring to Brahma, consciousness, because both of these plants are neuroprotective. They feed the brain. And so therefore, these are plants that are very good for supporting meditation. So there are all of these ways to classify the medicinal plants. And there are plants that are specifically for these higher levels of practice and fulfillment and well-being as well.
Wow. Well, that was an amazing tour and explanation of those different levels. And I love the way you've linked it all the way from our basic physical health challenges to our spiritual illumination and enlightenment, and to really see that they aren't separate realms, that they're all these layers of our being, and that as we come into a deep fulfilling energy flow and alignment with who we are, and have the foundation of physical health, then we really fulfill our spiritual purpose on this planet as well. So I think you've just done a brilliant job of explaining why this work with medicinal plants is so central for our moment in history, for ourselves personally, and ultimately for our spiritual growth and liberation. So that's part of why we're super excited that you are going to be offering this brand new version of Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution 2.0. So let's take a little time to talk about that. First of all, as you can just tell from this time with David, it's like, I feel like every minute there's like a new synapse, a new understanding, a new opening to a new possibility. It's a profound metaphysical and physical understanding of plants that is medicine itself for us, since we grow up with so much separation and atomization and reduction, that it's like there's a holism that just opens up just hearing David talk. And then you learn a lot about how to do the rejuvenation and detoxification regimes, and how to personalize, and how to enhance your cognitive function, and to take steps to prevent future disease, and really engage in the prevention that he was talking about. So this is a fantastic program. It's a 12-week program. You can find all the details at plantsandevolution.com, plantsandevolution.com. And it really is for, this is not just for like the professionals. This is for the very interested lay people who want to have a deep understanding, want to just do this work with yourself. And you're also going to get a lot of valuable information if you happen to work more professionally in healing professions as well. So this is builds upon a 7-week program, but goes much deeper, and it's more experiential and more interactive. There's going to be a bit of review of some of the foundations, but what I find is David always explains things from a slightly different angle, which then allows you to really take in the information on a deeper level and assimilate it and build upon it. So, David, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution 2.0 program and why you're offering this, and take us on a little tour of the modules.
Sure, my pleasure. And if people are following along on the website, you'll see that there are 12 modules, and these modules are basically broken down into 3 different sections. 3 main parts to the course. The first section is 3 modules that cover detoxification in relationship to our spiritual evolution. And so we could ask the question, well, what does detoxification have to do with spirituality? Well, that's what we will be addressing in this particular series of 3, because detoxification actually is completely linked to our mental state, our physiological energy and vitality. And our mental, emotional states and our physical vitality is, of course, very much linked to our spiritual well-being. And so we start with 3 modules that cover the principles of detoxification that we started talking about in quite a bit more detail. Start to introduce a lot of the concepts in a deeper form about how consciousness is connected to the biosphere of the earth, and again review some of the concepts of toxicity and detoxification and rejuvenation from classical Asian medical systems. And then we can look at how plants detoxify both the body and the mind and consciousness, not just our liver. We also want to know about the difference between medicinal plants and pharmaceutical drugs, some of the things that we touched on already in this discussion. And then the next 2 modules, Module 2 and Module 3, continue with the exploration of detoxification. So the first 3 modules are dedicated to detoxification and what that means to our spiritual well-being, not just our physical, mental, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being as well. So the second 3 modules, in other words, modules 4, 5, and 6, these modules are dedicated to the topic of rejuvenation. And so in those 6 modules, we're actually going to cover in quite a bit of depth the entire process of detoxification as presented by Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, some practical ways of doing all of this, the underlying theory and philosophy, the spiritual dimensions, practical applications, basic herb groups, all those things. 3 modules related to detoxification. Then we have 3 modules related to rejuvenation. And we can look at those very quickly. And we see, for example, in Module 4, we talk about 2 Ayurvedic terms that are very important, ojas and rasa. Ojas means the essence of nutrition and vitality. And rasa means the juice or the sap from the plants that give us the nutrition. And so we say, well, what is the purpose of ojas? Why do we need to learn about ojas? Well, ojas is everything in Ayurvedic medicine. It's the brightness of our spirit. It's the luminosity of our aura. It's the resilience and the endurance of our immune power. But it's also the deep nourishment of the central nervous system that is the fluid basis that allows immaterial consciousness to live within matter. So these are profound ideas of rejuvenation, not just, I want more energy. We're talking about rejuvenation of the spirit, the light in our eyes, the rejuvenation of our consciousness. That takes us to replenishing our essence. And that has to do with regaining our youthfulness. And that also has to do with happiness, contentment, and fulfillment. So there's a lot of herbs that do this, and we will focus on those herbs in that particular module. And we will continue along those lines in Module 5 with the Feast of Nectars, which is talking about how plants support our spirituality even more, and we talk about the spirituality of the food plants. And in Module 6, Rasayana. rejuvenation practices. And so here we talk about the 4 levels of illness that we just covered. We covered in more detail. We talk about rejuvenation processes according to Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. And we go even further and we talk about the last point that I made in that discussion, herbs that support the brain for our spiritual practice. So the first 3 modules, detoxification. Second 3 modules, rejuvenation. That's an entire course in itself. Now, why detoxification and rejuvenation? That's part 3. The next 6 modules are dedicated to manifestation, because manifestation is the end result of what we are trying to do. Why have good health? Why detoxify us? Why rejuvenate ourselves? The ultimate purpose is to manifest. Now, it could be manifesting things that are going to remove obstacles. For example, we need energy and concentration to manifest prosperity. We need energy and concentration to overcome obstacles. We need energy and concentration and patience and willpower to cope with obstacles if we cannot overcome them directly. And so we learn in the previous 3 modules in the rejuvenation section that all the tissues of the body, the blood and the muscles and the bones and the fat and the nerves, all play a role in helping us to overcome obstacles and to remove negativity and to attract good fortune and blessings. The condition of the body is what expresses itself through our karmas in life. And so therefore, all of the processes of detoxification and rejuvenation ultimately come down to what we are going to manifest. It could be material. It could be that we are manifesting increased prosperity. It could be that we are manifesting a better physical condition, better health. That's a physical manifestation. It could be that we are manifesting our creativity. Because our creativity, the process of projecting outwardly what's inside of us, is crucial to our health. And our health is crucial to doing that. And so, again, we see in the classical systems that there are certain aspects of our health, specifically our endocrine system, the reproductive system, the marrow and the bones. These parts of the body are directly responsible for giving us the vitality and the power to manifest that which is inside and to give it form externally. And maybe that's a book, or maybe it's a new career, or maybe it's a family. Whatever it is, we need energy to do that. And so that's another aspect of manifestation. And then finally, there's a spiritual dimension to manifestation as well. And that is that ultimately, what we would like to manifest is not necessarily a thing or a process. Maybe it's not creativity in the form of a book or music or art or something like that. Maybe it's just manifesting who we are. Maybe it's manifesting who we are at the deepest level. And so therefore, these last 6 modules of manifestation really are focused on all of those things, how we can manifest collectively a healthier world. And so we look at things like the use of the medicinal plants, as I talked about, for creating healthy ecosystems. That's a form of manifestation. But we're also talking about how do we manifest our spiritual awareness fully so that it's not blocked, it's not impeded. And so really our health, if we go back to the 4 levels of treatment that we just got done talking about, the ultimate goal is to do that. The ultimate goal is to have prosperity. It is to have happiness. It is to have material prosperity and well-being and happiness in the world. But it is also, more importantly, to manifest our spiritual capacity and our spiritual fulfillment. And I believe, personally, just to wrap this up, that this is not about gaining something or creating something or becoming something as much as it is simply allowing that which is our true nature to be present. So I'll conclude with that. That's a very, very brief overview. I'll just let everybody look through. You can see that we have 6 modules here titled these various things about ecological spirituality, the evolution of light into consciousness. This module covers how our consciousness actually is derived from solar energy. And knowing these things, we can make a link to the energies and elements around us. We can learn to see plants as intelligence that we are consuming to support our intelligence. We'll have a module on the entheogenic plants that have played a very important role in periods of time of spiritual evolution collectively, something we may want to consider at this time for our collective evolution. We'll talk a little bit about aromatic plants, and we'll talk about, finally, the last module here, the wish-fulfilling gems, plants that are used for ceremonial purposes as well. And that's a very big part of manifesting spiritual consciousness and helping to manifest our prayers and intentions as well. So thank you, Stephen, for the time to explain all of that. I always take so long with it, but it's a very full course. I hope that's helpful.
It's a very full course, and it's truly one of a kind. I think the threads that you're drawing together are pretty unique in being able to draw from so many different wisdom traditions and really have this holistic understanding that goes from the practical all the way up to the deepest spiritual aspirations. So you can see all the details again at plantsandevolution.com. That's spelled out, A-N-D, plantsandevolution.com. I'll share a few more things about this program. So not only do you get the great teachings from David, you get transcripts of every single class, and you get recordings, so you can add it to your library for the future and continue to reference back, because there's a lot of very specific recommendations around plants for different health purposes, and it's very helpful to be able to reference back to that. You also have small practice groups that you can be in at the end of each call. You can have question and answer time. There's also a number of great bonuses, and I'll just go through those right now. First, there's a whole 3-hour lecture and guided photo journey with David called Spiritual Beliefs and Practices in Indigenous Agriculture. So it's really bringing alive these tens of thousands of years of embedded wisdom in indigenous agriculture, that a lot of which we've lost. And so he's helping to understand that realm, and so how it applies to our modern life. There's also an ebook by David called Plants That Heal. And there's a reference guide from Floracopia that's a full-color 24-page ebook that really gives you the essentials for using essential oils. So this is important because essential oils can be misused and can actually result in problems if you don't use them correctly. And so David is very, very careful to give you the right recommendations for how you can use essential oils in a way that really, truly helps you. It's also an audio dialogue with Vasant Lad that is hosted by David on how medicinal plants work according to Ayurvedic knowledge and wisdom. And finally, we have a 20% discount from the Floracopia store, which is quite remarkable in itself, because it's a whole pharmacopoeia of amazing things that you can buy there that I'm sure you're going to get inspired by the program and want to have a whole roster of different herbs that you can work with for different purposes. And so you can get some of the highest quality herbs in the planet through Floracopia at 20% off when you're in this program. And finally, I should mention that we have one special present for today. This is for those of you who are listening now and you go to plantsandevolution.com and you're getting the yes internally, then you get the extra incentive and bonus when you sign up today only. This is an ebook called Plants That Heal that David has written. And David, you want to share a little bit about that ebook?
Sure. This is a series of presentations that I've given at naturopathic and herbal conferences over the years. And the articles basically outline a lot of the fundamental concepts that are in this program, as well as many other things. But it includes a chapter, for example, the aromatic journey of prana, the life force. It follows, according to Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, the evolution of light into consciousness, basically, how sunlight and moonlight become metabolized by the aromatic plants, and then using those celestial energies and their own ancient intelligence and the five elements of the earth create the aromatic molecules. And so I use the example of a sandalwood tree, how it is metabolizing the elements of the cosmos and the biosphere and creating these molecules of sandalwood oil that we then distill and then we inhale, and those molecules then come into our limbic system and they become perception within our own consciousness. And so that's one article that basically shows that everything that we are perceiving in our own consciousness is actually a flow of life force from the universe externally into the inner world. So it's those kind of articles. There's an article that covers an essential oil that I'm very fond of, helichrysum, and it goes into quite a lot of detail about the use of the Corsican helichrysum specifically. It's basically a collection of both kind of esoteric, holistic types of articles, but also medical presentations as well. So it's pretty full collection of information there.
Well, it's amazing. There's so much information, and that is just a great extra bonus for folks who register today. So I highly recommend that you take the time now to go over to plantsandevolution.com. There's a lot more detail on the modules. You can read testimonials from people who have taken this an earlier version of this program or have worked with David before. Really life-changing effects when you take this material and you apply it and really live in a different way that is more in balance and in tune with our ecology, and using plants as allies and relating to plants as allies for all levels of our health and well-being, and ultimately our moksha as well. So the program begins on August 3rd. It's going to run on Thursdays at 5 Pacific time. We've kept all of this, quite a lot of value, and we've kept it very accessible. So it's just 3 payments of $179 or 1 payment of $497, which is about 10% when you pay in full, 10% off when you pay in full. So when you sign up today at plantsandevolution.com, you get the Plants That Heal ebook with all that extra valuable information. All the other bonuses just come no matter what when you sign up, and the program begins on August 3rd. So the sooner you sign up, I always find that the sooner you sign up, the more the process begins to activate in you, because you're creating a connection and a relationship, and you're going to find new horizons opening up day by day. So thank you, David. It's been an illuminating hour, and I feel like, I came into creating the Shift Network with a lot of connections to different spiritual teachers and all these different lineages, and I feel like in many ways I've learned more from you than probably any of them, because it was a world that was a bit closed to me. I didn't have a deep relationship with the plant kingdom, and this very fascinating understanding that you've developed coming from all these different streams. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for the very holistic understanding of how we can thrive and prosper and ultimately give our greatest gifts through plant medicine. So thank you. And thank you all, and look forward to seeing many of you in the upcoming programs, Medicinal Plants and Spiritual Evolution 2.0 at plantsandevolution.com. So any closing words, parting words to folks considering joining you for the journey?
Well, I would just like to say thank you to everybody who has tuned in to our presentation. Thank you for your interest. And Stephen, I just want to say thank you to you, because through what you have manifested by creating the Shift Network, you have actually created something that's very, very important historically, because herbal medicine is really not receiving the attention that it deserves and needs at a global scale in a large, easily accessible venue such as what you offer. And so I think that what you have done by creating the Shift Network and then bringing in the field of natural medicine is that you have given voice to the plants, okay? And you have given voice to natural medicine, and as we know through the plant medicine summits that have been very well attended, the venue that you have created has been reaching tens and tens of thousands of people with the message of herbal medicine. And that's really very, very new, and it's very, very needed. So thank you for your work and for doing that.
Well, thank you. Couldn't have done it without you, for sure. So thank you, David, and thank you all for joining us. And do take the program with David. It's a wealth of information to last you a lifetime, and you can participate in this real revolution in understanding how we can thrive in relationship with plants at this historic moment where we really do need to heal our ecosystem and heal our planet, and begins with healing ourselves as well. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing the upcoming program, which you can again find at plantsandevolution.com. Blessings.